Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. Backlighting allows the detail and texture of translucent subjects, such as this leaf, to really stand out. Yet this technique also allows the apparent background to remain black. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay, so I'm going to start with the light source. Now normally you would use some form of light box for this, but what if you don't have one? Well, you can always use a softbox instead. So what I've got here is a 500 joule battery powered studio flash, and on the front of that I have a 2 foot by 2 foot softbox. Now the whole of this shot is orientated on a top-down view. Therefore, what I need to do is find a way of mounting this very close to the floor. So if I just take this off this stand for a second. What I've got on the bottom of this stand is a clamp, and on that clamp I've also got this piece of aluminium bar. Now this will allow me to mount the studio head that I've got here very close to the ground. There we are. So with that in this rather strange configuration, I can just place this about here somewhere. So this is now going to give me the equivalent of a light table. So in order to put something over the top of this, what I'm going to do is just put a couple of trestles either side of this and then place a piece of glass on the top. Now these are just normal trestles like you would use for woodwork, etc. And I've just put them either side of the softbox. So in order to put the glass on the top, I'm just going to use a couple of pieces of square tubing. Just like that. And then for the glass, I'm going to use this glass shelf. And I'm just going to place that over the top like so. Now, as I've got this configuration, you should be able to see that there is a gap between the surface of the softbox and the glass sheet. And that gap is actually quite important. I'll come back to that a bit later. Okay, so this is the general setup. So what I need to do now is just find a way of supporting a camera directly over the top here. And for that, I'm going to use a tripod. So this is the tripod I'm going to use, and it has the ability to asymmetrically spread the legs. So what I'm going to do is just put these two at the very extreme, like so, and leave the one at the back as it is. So then I should be able to just place this on here, something like that. There we are. And to make the whole thing just a bit more stable, I'm just going to add this sandbag onto this leg at the back here. So pop that on there, just put a clamp around that, like so. There we are. Good. So with that in place, I can come on to the camera. Now I'm going to use this full frame digital SLR with a 24-70 zoom lens on the front of it and a flash sync trigger on the top. Now this flash sync trigger can also control the energy in the studio head I'm using. The camera is tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to see the results as we go along. Okay, so I'm just going to pop this on the top of the tripod here. Like that. Okay, so with that on and vaguely pointing straight down at the glass, it's time for the subject. So the subject that I'm going to use is this leaf, which has just fallen. It's that time of year, and I'm just going to place this on the glass. Something like that. What we can do is line up the shot. So I'll just look through the viewfinder. First thing I'll do is just zoom that all the way to the 70mm end on the lens, focus that up a little, and just orientate the leaf. There we are, something like that. Okay, so with that done, what I can do now is just turn the camera on, and the software has recognized the camera, and these are the settings that I have on the camera at the moment. So it's in full manual mode. I have a shutter speed of 1/250th of a second, which is the flash sync speed for that camera, ISO 100, and an aperture at the moment of f8, which should give sufficient depth of field. After all, the leaf is more or less flat. Okay, so with these settings and no flash turned on yet, I'll take an image just to make sure that we don't get any contamination from the house lights. There we are. So apart from a bit of a reflection of the house light, there is nothing in the way of an image to speak of, which is what we want. Okay, so with all that done, what I can do now is turn the flash on. So I can do that from the remote here. So I'll just turn the remote on, select that head, and just turn it on. There we go. So at an arbitrary energy level, what I'm going to do, just grab an image and see what we get. So straight away, that's not too bad at all. It looks reasonably sharp. I'll just zoom in and have a look. You can see the amount of detail that we're getting in this leaf. It's possibly getting a little blurry on the very edge here, so I can do some fine tuning by going to live view in this software. I can just finely tune this bit by changing the focus point here. There we go. That's making it more out of focus. There we are, that's bringing it all back in again. There we are. So that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so now we can dispense with live view. I'll just grab another image. There, that looks a lot better. Good. Okay, so that's all fine, but there's a few things not quite right with this. In the original image, the background was black. Now that was achieved quite easily with a piece of black card. So what I'm going to do is just place this on top of the softbox here, which is also why I had a gap here between the glass and the softbox, because it will allow the light to come round the card and illuminate the subject from the back, which is what we want. But we will have a black background. So once again, just to line this up, what I'm going to do is look through the viewfinder and just move the card until it's in the right position. There, something like that. Okay, so now with that in place, I'll grab another image. There. So now we have a black background on the actual subject itself. But we still have this reflection, and the contrast, the overall contrast of the image here is lacking slightly, and that's mostly because of all the light coming around here and going straight into the lens. So I can address those two problems at the same time. So what I'm going to use is an aperture mask. So here we have yet another piece of card, this time on a retort stand, and what I'm going to do is just place this about here somewhere. So I'll look through the viewfinder. We'll just move this into position, and the idea is that the black card will just about fill the aperture. There we are. Something like that. And surprisingly, it doesn't have to be that accurate. As long as it's somewhere close, it should work. So with that in position, what I'll do now, just grab another image. There, that's exactly the sort of thing that I want. I just go back to the previous image and now come on to this one. Should be able to see that this is a lot more contrasty. We've got a very nice highlight running along the stem here, so I think that's pretty good. And I think for the actual capture, that's it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to modify this image within Capture One software before I export it to Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is just go to part of the software where I can adjust the high dynamic range. Now you can do this in Photoshop, but I thought for a change I would do it in this. So what I'm going to do is grab this, and as you can see, if I take it in this direction, it's taking the blacks up, and if I take it in this direction, it's taking the blacks down. Now there is a point where I can get the background to go black without really changing too much of the foreground image. There we are, somewhere around there. While we're here, we'll just have a little look at the highlights. There we go. And I'll just add a little clarity and a little structure. There we are, just to bring out all the veins in the leaf. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Good, so with that done, what I can do now is export that image to Photoshop. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. And the first thing I'm going to do is just make a copy of this camera original file. And the way I like to do that is just to go onto the layer here, right click the mouse, ask for a duplicate layer, but ask for a new document. We'll just call this Leaf. There we go. So Photoshop has made me a new document, called it Leaf. It's at the top here, so I can now shut down the camera original. So this is what I will be editing. Right, so the first thing to do is just to have a look at all these spots of dust and so on. It's inevitable that you will end up with dust on the glass. No matter how many times you clean it, you will always get this. But because we changed the black point in Capture One, all this area around the actual leaf itself is black. Now you can tell that by looking at the numbers just up here as I move the cursor around the image. And you can see that they're very low, 1 or 0. So that's showing that is, to all intents and purposes, black. So what I can do to get rid of all this lot and generally clean the image up a bit is just add a new layer, like so. And on this layer, I'm literally just going to paint this with black. So making sure that black is selected as the foreground colour, grab a paintbrush, and off we go. And I'll just paint all that out. There we are. So with that done, that's worked very well, and I didn't have to actually trace the edge of the subject at all. I've done all that basically by just making sure that the tones were correct in the first place. Okay, so with that done, it just remains to pick a crop. Now I'm going to use this for video, so I'm using a specific ratio of 16:9, and I might just bring that in ever so slightly and just alter the orientation a bit. There we are. There, something like that. Okay. And there we have it. So this has made a fairly spectacular image of a fallen leaf just by using a backlighting technique. And we've been able to bring out the detail within the leaf itself and also retain all the tones in the image. And I think overall that's turned out quite nicely. Okay, well I hope you liked watching how I made that image. And if you like watching these sorts of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.